Welcome everyone to Unleashing the Power of OpenAI GPT-3 in FME data integration. We'll go ahead and kick things off introducing our presenters. So Chris, we'll get started with you.
All right. So hey everyone, my name is Chris. I'm part of our customer solutions team here at Safe Software. And yeah, I'll be going through a bunch of different demos for an OpenAI GPT-3 integration today. Don, I'll pass it off to you.
Yeah, hi, my name's Don Murray, and I'm one of the founders of Safe Software, and spend a lot of my time thinking about XML, and I'm sure somehow deep down in the bowels of Open GPT and OpenAI, there's lots of XML slinging around. So that was my excuse to come. But no, this is seriously, this is one of those times in technology that is a game changer, and so Dale and I are very excited, and we're really excited to show how perfectly this meshes with with data, and FME is a tool that extracts more data than ever is a really great place for us. We're really excited. So that's me, Dale.
Yeah, I'm the other co-founder of Safe Software, and together with Don, we've been at this. We're into our 30th year, I guess, is what you might say. We don't have our birthday yet for a while, but it's closing in on it.
And we look as good as ever.
Yes, we haven't aged a day. It's amazing.
No, we have not aged a day.
I'm sure that the AI would agree with us there, but it's pretty amazing. So there one set of things is just the amazing potential of what AI can do across all industries, but there actually is a whole bunch of stuff that actually can be practically done inside of automated workflows. And so we're just super excited to show today how actually by the end of this webinar, you'll be able to go to your FME, if you're an FME customer, and start applying this stuff right now. You don't even, what's kind of amazing is you don't actually need to upgrade, because long ago, Don and his team invented this thing called FME Hub, and it lets us put things up there that just show up inside people's FMEs. And so the connectors we're showing today are able to be used. You can sign up very simply with OpenAI, get yourself an account, and start burning that first $18 of credit. Chris, how much have you burned so far of your credit?
Oh, I have to double check that. I think as of yesterday, with all the testing and workspaces that I've run so far, and granted, I've been running this since late November, I've accumulated a whopping $2.90. So
yes, wow.
Yeah.
So your dollar goes a long ways. So anyway, we're very, very excited to start showing you and dig into just the implications. And I would, I guess, warn you that it's another one of these things that Don and I often say, that the only limit is your imagination. And so get into the imagination station today and get ready to have some fun.
Great. Okay.
Awesome. So with that, I'll get our presenters to turn off their webcams just to save on some bandwidth for our demos coming up here. And I will take us all through the Livestorm platform if this is your first time in the platform. If you do have any audio issues throughout, we have that help button on the bottom left, and it has 4 simple troubleshooting steps. And then, as you all are already doing, share your reactions with us throughout the webinar. We love to see them using that react button on the bottom middle. Then we have the chat. You're all using that. Thank you so much. Keep letting us know where you're tuning in from, and leave any comments throughout the webinar there. And the questions tab. So if you do have any questions throughout, you can leave those in that tab. And shout out to Mark and Sienna for joining us as well here today for Q&A support. So we have lots of specialists on the back end there ready to help answer your questions. We'll also have a poll come up during the webinar, so that'll be under the polls tab. So keep your eye peeled for that. If you do wish to download the slide deck and follow along live with us, you can click that download button on the top right of the deck. You'll see it there. And we'll also send out the slides and any resources in a follow-up email. So with that, we'll go right into a flash demo here.
Alrighty. Get my screen going. Here we go. Yeah, so we're going right out of the gate with a flash demo. So what we wanted to do out of the gate was really just show you a little bit about the FME Hub. So this is, of course, where you would download these connectors, these transformers from. So we're just on the FME Hub's webpage. You can also download them directly in FME Workbench. So we're taking a look at the OpenAI completions connector. This has links to where you can sign up for an API key, sign up for an OpenAI account, as well as an example for how it's run, just how this transformer is run in action. It also gives you all the documentation for all the different parameters, and hopefully it's just a very robust resource for you to get started with working with OpenAI in FME. So I'll transition over into FME Workbench. Of course, you can directly download this into Workbench just by typing in OpenAI. This will show up in the FME Hub section. I already have it downloaded on my machine, so that's why it's up here. But just to take a quick look at our parameters of what we have here, it's everything that you would expect to see from the OpenAI documentation. So everything has been copied directly across from the OpenAI API documentation reference, where all you need to provide is your API key, which again, you need to sign up for, and you can get that on your Manage Account page. Select your model. We have a list of predefined models here. You can also type these in. So if we fall out of sync with this, you can start to type in which model you want next. In this case, we'll go with Text DaVinci 3. And then you have your prompt, and this is what everyone's here for. You want to see what the question AI can answer is. In this case, let's work with some classification. So we'll say, hey, let's get a list of the following produce and their color category that they fall into. We know that apples are red, oranges are oranges, or oranges are orange, and bananas are yellow. So let's find out what color is a watermelon. So we'll go ahead and click that. I've already run through this, so I have it cached in FME already, and we can see that the answer is green. When we actually get the response back from OpenAI, it's coming back in just the standard JSON format. I'll open that up. So we're getting a look at what the response looks like raw here from the OpenAI connector, but we also have these directly available in unexposed attributes, which is exactly what we're doing in that attribute manager. So we're just assigning it to a new attribute. So that would be the first example. I'm just going to switch to a second preset question that I have here, and this would be for more text generation as well. So let's find out what the nickname for the full name Donald Draper is. This is another example that we saw on Twitter, and just see, like, could we get the same response in FME? So I'll go ahead and rerun this. And in just a second here, we'll see that the answer is Dawn. So we've done a couple of examples of classifying some data before to help ourselves get an answer from OpenAI, as well as doing some text generation to simplify some text. So there's a lot of great use cases that we're going to see throughout the rest of this webinar, but this is just to set the tone of here's the very basic foundations of how to get started. So I'll stop sharing my screen here. We can go back to the slides.
Thanks so much, Chris. I think now we're going to just warm up to see how much this technology has already started to affect you. So Elizabeth, tell us what to do.
So we're going to head to the polls tab now on the bottom right, and you can place your vote. And in the meantime, folks, once you do place your vote, you'll be able to see the results come in live there. So interesting. It seems like so far most folks know that it's there, haven't tried it. Some have dabbled. Okay. Give it a few more seconds there.
We're having a good voter participation today.
We are.
It looks like it's actually fantastic for lots of you. This is pretty new stuff, and that's part of why Dawn and I were so excited to be able to show this off, because it is, we think, very, very important to be aware of, and then to start figuring out how much or how little it's going to impact your work and your workflows. Awesome.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for voting. That's great.
Yeah, so the plurality is that they know it's here, but they haven't tried it, at about 42%. The dabblers are about 40%, so that's 80% that are kind of on the edge. There's 52 that have never, or sorry, 13% that have never heard of it. And so I'm so glad you came to this webinar today, because I hope it will have introduced some useful things to you. And then there's 7% whose lives wouldn't be worth living if they didn't have it anymore. So that, and it is true that once you start using it, it becomes pretty addictive. I know my good friend Dawn, you were having some fun yesterday, and I think you'd be sad if you couldn't have it anymore, wouldn't you be?
Oh yeah. It is a huge, it's a huge accelerator and a tool. You know, we're busy writing a lot of text. You ask it a question, and then you take that and and you massage it. Of course, you don't just take the raw output, but it's a huge accelerator. It's a great tool, right?
Yes, and I will probably post the video in the chat a bit later, but Steve Jobs in the 70s used to do this riff about how the computer was a bicycle for the mind, and why that was a profound thing, and that a bicycle and a human together suddenly become the most efficient creator or created animal and basically being in terms of turning energy into motion. And he said that a computer would be like that for the mind. I don't know that we ever really fully achieved that, but I'm arguing that with ChatGPT, we've got our bicycle for the mind. That's for sure. So I wanted to start, and again, even the results of this poll kind of tell us this, that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed, and that not everybody always is able to use or take the best advantage of the newest developments that there are. And that's this famous author, William Gibson, that said that. And what we're hoping today is basically to distribute the future a bit more widely. And so glad that you've tuned in. This also, yeah, Dawn, want to say something about the future?
Yeah, and really, I mean, that I applaud OpenAI themselves for one of their goals is to bring this technology to the masses so that it's not just controlled by a few small people, or big people with lots of money. So really great to see that they're bringing this technology to the masses, and it is affordable. You touched on that earlier, so it's fantastic.
Yes.
So,
yeah. So I wasn't aware of this tweet when it happened, but I saw this posted again in November, and it's worth understanding. So this is Andrej Karpathy, who was the head of AI at Tesla for a long time. He's now back in academia. But this sort of model of where we've come from with software, and Dawn, you and I are almost old enough to remember the beginning, although
yes, almost, exactly,
not quite.
Yeah.
But for most of Dawn's and my career, we've been at Software 1.0, and I'm so proud of the work our team has done all throughout FME, and in terms of making amazing algorithms for doing absolutely spectacular things. And then at some point, fairly recently, the shift started to happen where the data that you had became more important. And Dawn, how does that sit with us?
Yeah, exactly. Now data is everything. In the early days, you would move the data to the processing. Now you move the processing to the data. And now it is the data that everybody views as value, not so much the applications that they have as value. So, that's really exciting. So, yeah, what about the 3.0?
Yes, the 3.0 is what we're going to be talking about today, and how for at least some class of problems, the game is now designing what's called the prompt. And that was what Chris was showing at the beginning there, the questions you're going to ask the AI. And depending on how you word the question has a huge impact in terms of the quality and value of the answer. And so just like people are very good at writing Google searches, I think there's going to be a class of people who become extremely gifted and proficient at making the AI sing and dance and solve problems for them. And hopefully you'll get a taste of that as we go through today.
Yeah, and one thing I really like about OpenAI is it's conversational. So if you ask a question and it gives an answer that's too long or not quite right, you can say, okay, can you give me that in 30 words or less, right? And then it just knows, it has the context of what it did. So you don't have to constantly, like when you're doing searches, constantly take your old search and add to it or change it. So it's and that is hugely powerful.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So the other thing that sort of spurred this was when was this one? October 31st. I saw this tweet, and then we have this thing we call demo days at SAFE, and so that's when Chris kind of created the equivalent thing in FME, and that's what we're showing today. But this was somebody that showed how they extended Google Sheets to call the OpenAI APIs and fill in new values. And we'll give you the link to this. Maybe I'll ask Elizabeth to post the link to this tweet for some of you that want to watch the little video to get a sense of what that was doing. And that was really some of the inspiration that we had, where all of a sudden we realized that we could use this in workflows right inside FME, aside from the other use cases, which are, of course, outside FME. And so what we're hoping today with this webinar is show you how generative AI, in other words, AI technology that generates things, can revolutionize at least some set of workflows. And secondly, how FME makes it so darn easy to apply this to your data assets. It's just amazing. So Dawn, you want to talk about who in the world we are?
So for those, we'll really quick here, but for those people who are new to Safe Software and FME, what we sell is an enterprise integration platform. So you can connect all your applications, connect to all your data wherever it is. So that's really our shtick. Is our deployment is crazy. It doesn't matter whether you're on Linux, you're in the cloud, you're in containers. You can install the entire platform wherever you want. If you want to go quickly and just have an FME server up and running in a few minutes, use FME server. And yeah, an FME mobile there's free applications that enable you to visualize or run workspaces, or there's an AR app so you can visualize your data in context with the real world as well. So that's and everything we did today is of course using the FME enterprise integration platform. Yeah.
Yes, and we're going to be showing demos that kind of run the gamut here today as well. And yeah, Don, you like this one?
Yeah, I love this one. This shows that we as far as data integration goes, nobody does as many data types as we go. So and this is great because spatial data or data with location intelligence is becoming more and more important to all industries, and nobody does it like FME. And so so you can see them all there. So if there's a data type that you don't think we do, please reach out to us. We might just have it as a different name.
Yes. And so a couple of words on OpenAI, and as Don hinted at, we really applaud their mission is to ensure that artificial general intelligence, AGI, benefits all of humanity. And Don, I don't know if I mentioned it to you before, but have you heard of the book called Our Last Invention? Does that ring a bell?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
It was kind of a sobering tale of the power of what AGI could be. And at least OpenAI is trying to get ahead of that and ensure that this is very democratized, that basically almost anybody, any company can make use of it. And so that's a fantastic thing. And that includes everybody on this webinar. And hey, you don't have to use FME to use it, but boy, if you use FME, it's pretty darn fast to get going.
Because now you can join it to all your data assets, right? That's really the exciting thing. And even it's safe, we're already using it to,
yes.
connect some of and we'll see some of the demos here. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, that's a few words on them. And we'll also talk at the end today about how you can get at this through Microsoft stuff. But one of the things, this is sort of a side tour, they had this around for a little while, and I didn't even understand quite what it was at first when I started seeing these on the internet. But one of the APIs is the so-called image generation API, or Dolly. Almost looks like Dale, doesn't it, Don?
It does. Yeah, so close.
Similar artist capabilities as me sometimes too. It's an interesting kind of thing. And as my grandfather, when I was a little kid, I used to be excited about different tech things. And my immigrant grandfather, when I would say to him, come from very, very humble backgrounds, I'd show him my fancy new thing, and he'd say, "What good is it? What good is it?" about so many of my things. And this is what I had the question of this one. And so I asked the AI, what are practical uses for batch producing images with the OpenAI generative image creator? And so there's a whole long list here of possible uses that you might have for this. Okay, so I can imagine, making a spreadsheet of some prompts and getting some images out. And so then I said to the AI, give me 5 interesting Dolly prompts that would generate images that would be interesting to users of FME. And, it's actually pretty good. A 3D rendering of a city with a complex network of pipelines. Yeah, you guys might like that. And, all these different kinds of things looking good. So let's put those in a text file. And of course, this shows, Don, that even if there's AI, what editor do I still use?
You use VI. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. So with that, let's try a demo. And Elizabeth, I'm a little nervous here. Can you get me started? Here we go. So yeah, there I go. Okay, so I'm going to take that file and drag it onto FME so that I got my prompts there. Actually, Don, you and I wrote the text file reader. Remember that?
It was an adventure. Yes.
Our last invention, so to speak. Yeah. So I can run this in FME and I can at least see what's inside that text file. And hopefully I've got my prompts there. And sure enough, there they sort of look like they're right. And let's just check that out for sure. Yep. Okay. So far, so good. We've read the prompts in. Now I want to put down that that image generator thing. And I have ahead of time preloaded this with defaults so that I've got my API key in there. And I'm telling it that the prompt comes from the text line data. I can get that from that attribute like that. And I think that's looking good. I think I should go ahead and run this. Let's go ahead and run it. And now I can get those answers. There they come down from the sky. And I can use the visual preview to take a peek. And there they seem to be. And I have to kind of click this into slideshow mode. And then I can flip through and see the various images. That's looking good. So now it's time to write them out. I think it's a raster. And so we can go to, let's try PNG. Yep. And I'll put them in a folder. And when I hit enter here, there we go. I'm going to be fanning out by the base name. And that means I'm going to make a different file for each one based on that. Let's run that. Let's take a peek at what's created. And so there we go. We got these images and just a few. Yep. I don't like those names though, Don.
No,
so
no, they don't tell you what they are. So
yeah, I mean, sure, I can see these things, but man, the names are not good. So, you know, maybe I could ask the AI to make me some nicer file names.
Oh, now you're showing off, Dale, but go for it.
It's a bit of a flex. So let's use the completion, because I know it's going to cost like 1/100 of a cent. So I might as well do this. Yeah. And there's the prompt. Create a good file name for a PNG with this prompt. Do not include a file extension. I don't want no stinking file extension on that thing.
That's right.
And so there we go. And now
when your prompt, just to be clear, you're sending your prompt to the completion thing, and it's looking at that and generating you a nice file name.
Yeah. And so then I got to get rid. It always comes back with a carriage return at the beginning. So I had to get rid of that with that string replacer using a regular expression. And so now I've got the base name that I've just made is that. Those seem like good file names to me.
They're great.
And so now I'm just going to add the writer again, another one, and then we'll let her rip. Okay. And then we'll see what we got. So there we go. A fairly interesting, sophisticated workflow. This whole webinar is an FME flex. That is sort of true.
Yeah, no, it's just amazing because, you know, without this thing coming up with those 5 base names would have been like, how would you even do it? Right. Like you would have had, you know, yeah. So really great.
So there we go. That was kind of fun.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
So just to recap, this is the whole workspace, and I've annotated it, and you can get this afterwards and supply your own API key, and maybe even, you don't have to use VI, but you can use any editor you want and make your text file of prompts and start generating images to impress your friends and neighbors.
Do you have anything to say about API keys, Dale? And
yes. I did have troubles in that. I do think there's a couple things. OpenAI will limit you to 60 requests a minute. And so there's a decelerator. We use an FME to kind of deal with that. And then the other thing is I got in trouble with this thing because my API key quit working when I tried to recreate this demo. So I had to just get a new API key, but the old one still worked in the original workspace. And I cannot explain that. But my lesson is, don't be afraid. If you get weird errors, just get a new API key and all is well. Or maybe use the Microsoft subscription service. We'll see.
Which we'll talk about later. Yeah.
I did use it as well to generate regular expressions. So that to help me strip off the carriage returns. And that was a lot nicer. Yeah. And there's the results that we saw. So
even you know, asking it to generate your regular expression, I have no doubt, Dale, that you can generate a regular expression like I do, but the amount of time that saved, you know, generating regular expressions is always something measured in a couple minutes. Now you've turned it into, by using it, you've turned it into a couple of seconds. Actually,
I'll hop back there. The other thing I love about it is actually it explained to me why it works too.
Yes, exactly.
Which that is gold, actually.
Yeah. Yes, you can paste that as part of the comment in the
Yes. Yeah. It's like if we integrate this with FME, I think you'd want to keep the explanation in there for, it's sort of like, Don, are you old enough to have used APL?
Oh, I sure am. I remember those keyboards like they had, remember those?
Yeah, I think I should actually, I wonder if chat can generate APL code, but what would be most useful is the documentation, because that stuff was truly write-only code. You could not figure it out a day later. But yeah, I think now we'll hand it over to Chris to talk us through what this text generation stuff is all about.
Yeah, so we're going to be doing a couple more demos coming up here. So I'll have a couple back to back. Yeah, text generation is really one of the main use cases that we've used OpenAI for here internally, I would say. So given a prompt, so just that question that you're asking, the model is going to return one or more predicted completions. And really, those are going to be your answers. So you can kind of define if you want it to give you one answer back or multiple, and then you can kind of pick from all the ones that have been returned. So there's a lot of different model sets within the GPT-3 platform. Obviously, the ones we've been using most are Text Da Vinci. There's also ones called Ada, Codex, content filtering. They all have specific purposes and are better at different tasks. So be sure to check their documentation for which which model set is best for your application. They have a great guide that kind of walks you through which one you should be using. So some of the examples that you see here are kind of, they can be generalized where it's more Q&A. So you're asking a question like, what color is the watermelon? Could be generating some summaries. So it's too long, you don't want to read it. Summarize it for a second grader. So kind of dumb it down to make it easier to understand, as well as creating instructions, which we'll see much later on in the webinar, which is really cool. There's also more technical examples as well. So you can do things like basic text to command line or regex, as you just saw with Dale's example, or even translating SQL. We've even asked it to generate some instructions for an FME workspace, which is pretty cool. So we'll see an example of that later on. So Dale, I'm not sure if you wanted to talk to this one.
Sure. Yes. So this is what we wanted to, kind of highlight is there are actually a variety of practical uses for calling this API in batch. And so I thought who better to tell us than OpenAI itself. And so there you go, generating large numbers of descriptions, translation, summarization, content generation. One is actually doing market research and doesn't have this in here, but we'll show some of that in a minute. Sentiment analysis, if you have text. We're going to show how you can fish addresses out of text. If you're a spatial kind of person and you get text, that might be it. But anyway, the key thing is that you can make many API requests, drive it from a spreadsheet or other data that you've got, and then see what's going to happen.
Yeah, Dale, I'll jump in here quickly. This morning, we asked it, to explain what remote engines are for FME Server, a feature which is not on our website. We've never released and is only within Safe Software. And of course, it imagined what remote engines were, and it just nailed it.
Wow.
Yeah.
We'll have to ask it what the next feature we should add to FME is.
Yeah, it would. Yeah.
Good stuff. All right, so that brings us to our next demo where we're going to be doing some address validation that Dale kind of alluded to there. So what we're going to be doing here is taking an input spreadsheet just from Google Sheets. Again, this could be any data set because once it comes into FME, it's just data. We treat it all the same. The obstacle here is that, well, addresses, as we know, can be written in numerous formats. They can have missing components. We'll see in the data set that I'll show in a moment here. Some are going to have missing cities, states. Others are going to have missing postal codes. Some have a combination of two missing elements as well. So we're going to leverage the power of the REST API and that OpenAI completions connector to figure out what are those missing components and complete our data set. So I'll go ahead and share my screen here. Just one moment. Okay, so we're looking at Google Sheets. And again, this could be from any data set, but just to keep it simple, we're working with an input data set from Google Sheets. And there's no smoke and mirrors here, so we'll see exactly the same thing when we hop into Workbench. So just as I mentioned before, some of these are missing postal codes. We're going across countries as well. So we're in Canada as well as in the States. And this is just a list of different stadiums for NFL and CFL football teams. So I'll open this up. So in that same workspace, that we were showing earlier, we have the input data set for address validation. So again, no surprises here. All that information is the exact same as what we saw in Google Sheets. We are missing the state and the zip code. And what we can actually do now is pass all of this information into an OpenAI prompt. So we can get the 2-letter state abbreviation and the zip code from a following address, and we can feed in that address value from that Google Sheet. So again, that could be from a database table, a column, anything like that. And how we're actually going to get this back is we're going to specify, give it back specifically in a pipe delimited list. And you'll notice this is extremely helpful when we're parsing the response back because we need this to be a bit more structured instead of just getting like a color green, for example, back. I will also mention here, there are a couple of different parameters that you might want to consider using when it comes to generating your response to get a more meaningful answer. So max tokens, if you want to increase this value, depending on the length of your answer, you're going to want to make sure that answer that has enough values in the max token. Sorry, it's a little complicated to explain. You want to make sure you have enough values there so it can provide all of the characters back. Otherwise, it'll kind of just truncate the answer for you. The other thing here is the temperature. When this is set to 1, 1 is a more creative answer, 0 is a more definitive answer. So we want this to be the actual zip code and the actual state. So we'll go ahead and run that.
It's kind of like a BS setting, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, because you kind of want to see like how accurate do you want the model to kind of run through and make sure that the answer is correct. I'm actually not sure how it works on the back end, but it's a pretty interesting parameter to play with. So once we get the response, again, that's just going to come back in the JSON response as well. And we know that since we've asked for it in a pipe delimited list, we can split that using an attribute splitter. So we'll do that exact same thing. We'll split it on that pipe character and stuff it into a list. And that way we can actually assign it to new attributes. So we'll know that the first element of that index, of that list index, is going to be our 2-character state. And then the second element, which would be list element 1, will be our zip code. So we're going to use this to fill out the rest of that data set. I'll go ahead and run it from here. Have it pre-cached just so it's a little bit faster for us. And there we go. We're writing it off to Google Sheets, and I'll hop back into Google Sheets at this point. So this was our input. I'll take a flip to our output tab, and we can see that now we have a completed data set. So the first one was missing a postal code. We can see that, or a zip code, and that's going to be filled out in this field as well. So I actually have the answers. I went through and used OpenAI to generate this full data set actually. And what I did on the answer sheet was I went and just did a quick visual comparison from Google Maps. Obviously different services provide different addresses. So the source of truth we're using in this case is Google Maps, which is our address field here. And we can see that ChatGPT got it, or not ChatGPT, OpenAI GPT-3 rather, got a couple of zip codes incorrect. So this is the zip code that we got back from OpenAI versus this is what Google says it is. So we see that's incorrect for a couple of examples here. First being the Vancouver Stadium, the next being Winnipeg, as well as Montreal. All the other ones did a great job though. So that is the end of that demo. Let me hop back into the slides really quickly. Okay, so that is using OpenAI for geocoding. Obviously, OpenAI isn't a dedicated geocoding service, but it is fully capable and it is very cost effective. As we mentioned, we've been using this since late November. And at this point, I've only used, I think I've scraped over $3. So just based on the queries that I've run so far. So this is a great tool if you want to do things with geocoding that are missing elements. So things like postal code, city, state, because you can leverage that AI tool to get that information for you and then fill it out for the rest of your data set so you can use it in the rest of your analysis. And at this point, we're going to transition over to a little bit of a different demo. So again, this is going to be using FME server. We're going to use webhooks from Salesforce and then push that data from Salesforce into OpenAI using FME, and then return that data back to Salesforce to give us a more complete picture of what our new data set's going to look like. So to give a quick example of what's going to happen here, we're going to be doing some lead generation with AI. So the goal of this is going to be to collect valuable intel about our prospective customers. So what we're going to do is in Salesforce, we're going to create a new lead, only providing their first name, last name, and their company. And we're going to pass that information into OpenAI to allow that to answer some questions about the company. Things like what's their annual revenue? How many customers do they have? Where's their office headquartered, including their lat-long information, and just give us a quick summary of what their organization does. So something that could help us just in that sales process. Obviously, the obstacles with this, if you were to do this manually, it would be extremely repetitive, time-consuming, and it often gets neglected as it's just not an interesting task to be doing from a person. So what we're going to do here is go back into Google Chrome. I'll switch tabs again. And what we have here is just in Salesforce. The neat thing with this is we're going to be leveraging Apex triggers, which are a fancy term from Salesforce for webhooks. And what webhooks mean is whenever an action is performed in Salesforce, so in this case, I'll be creating that new lead. As soon as I hit the save button, it's going to send all the data that I have available into a JSON packet to our FME server, which we can pass into a workspace, parse the response, put it into OpenAI, and then generate a more meaningful response there. So I have some information pre-filled here, just the first name, last name, and the company. I'll go ahead and click save. And at this point, as soon as I've hit that save button, all of that information has been sent to FME server. We're going to feed that into a workspace. And since Salesforce isn't a dynamic view, I'll just scroll down here just so we can see. No smoke and mirrors here again. Everything is kind of missing in terms of annual revenue, their customers, and address information. But when I refresh that tab, there we go. We see that there's now information about the annual revenue, their customers, their address information. Again, that is geolocated. We have their website, how many employees do they have, as well as a description of what they've done. So it's a fantastic way to use FME to leverage this for real-time operations, whether you're generating new leads or parsing out their data sets. You can use this for a ton of different things. Obviously, this is a text generation example, but you can see the sky's the limit here.
Wait a minute, Chris. Let's just do that again in slow motion. So what actually happened, let's roll a tape back. You entered only a lead and you counted to 5 and suddenly a whole bunch of info was added.
That's correct.
You're going to do it again in slow motion.
Let's do it for the Canadian Football League. Canadian Football League. I believe
That's 3-down football.
That is. I believe his name is Randy Ambrosi, so we'll do that for there as well. Again, the same things kind of happening here. We're just switching to that details tab. As Dale's mentioned, we're kind of counting to 5 just because this isn't a live view. So FME does obviously need a little bit of time to run that workspace. I think the workspace runs in just a few seconds. And then once we refresh this tab, we now see all that information.
Wow.
So that is a really cool way to kind of see how you can leverage this in terms of Salesforce operations. Obviously, this can apply to various systems. You don't have to be limited to Salesforce. Anything that supports webhooks can leverage this exact same technology. And we actually took this one step farther because, well, if we're just going to be generating this in Salesforce, maybe some information could be lost. We're going to kind of forget about that customer. So why don't we send ourselves a Slack message? You could, of course, do this with email or Microsoft Teams as well. So if a certain threshold is met, say a certain revenue, we'll say 14, I think the revenue threshold that we set was about 500,000. They could be detected as a potential large customer. So we can notify our team. Again, this could be done for similar data sets or just different threshold values. And you could notify your team or key stakeholders just to keep them informed of the completion of that process.
How does it work?
It's amazing.
Yeah. So how all that works is it's powered by, again, those Apex triggers from Salesforce. That'll go into the workspace. And it is just an FME workspace that's been published up to FME server. So we're just asking certain questions about the data we know. We're passing that into that OpenAI completions connector. So in this case, I'll just expand this here. I'll just say, hey, I'm a profiling bot. I've provided the following information about the requested company. Tell me exactly what this company does. And we'll kind of rinse and repeat for the various questions, things like annual revenue, their URL, their headquarters, and then feed that back into Salesforce once we receive that data from OpenAI. Switch there. All of this is running, again, in that FME server automation. So that webhook is kind of the key here. As soon as that action is performed in Salesforce, we're going to get that webhook information. It's just a JSON packet again. It's going to pass that data into that workspace that I just showed very simply, and just passing that message content in. And that's really going to complete the circle for us. So yeah, we'll say simple as that.
Simple. Wow.
Yeah. All right, so back into the slides. So that is really a great example of automated lead generation. FME server can really be leveraged here to kind of finish that event-driven process from any business system. Again, this doesn't necessarily have to be Salesforce. Anything that supports webhook triggers, you could run it on a simple schedule. When files are dropped in a certain directory, you could do things similar to what Dale was showing earlier. There's a ton of different options for how you could actually set this up and configure it in your workspace.
Yeah. We've had some customers set up database triggers even, that database trigger hits a REST API endpoint, and so many things you can do.
Yeah, that's right. You could tie this to a database trigger every time. But yeah, just yeah. Chris, I think one of the most interesting things in your use case there was you're firing off, what was it, 7 different queries, and then you're pulling them all back together again. And again, FME is very, very good at basically fanning out the flow and bringing stuff back together, aggregating it, and then also putting in business logic like who to let know based on the size. We weren't asking in there, I don't think, the industry that they were in, but you could route things to the right sales rep based on that.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. You could build all that logic in, so you don't necessarily have to send a Slack message to a general channel. You could, in theory, email that directly to the appropriate stakeholder.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Could you have combined the questions in one call and then?
You definitely can. I found in this case, it was better to separate them out. Certain models are better at handling all of the questions in a single prompt. You kind of have to structure them to be numbered 1 through however many. And that just helps the AI engine understand that this is the end of the question and this is the start of the next question.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
And see, that's where this new art of writing the prompt comes in, because if I know where Dawn is going there, if you could actually do them all in one, then that's only 1 call to the API instead of 7. That's a 7th the cost.
Yes. I'll say in terms of cost, it actually doesn't change too much because you're going to be using more tokens in theory. The gain would be in efficiency. So instead of sending seven queries, it'll be in theory 7 times faster.
Yeah,
so,
because we have these rate, at least with OpenAI's APIs right now, there's a rate limit of, I think, 1 per second or 60 per minute, which gets us into some possible trouble. But
exactly. Yeah, and that kind of does come in hand with those tokens as well. So the tokens kind of depend on how long that response is. If your response is too long, since we were generating those descriptions, it could get truncated. So that's kind of why we decided in this case we'll keep them as separate queries. Also, speed really isn't of the essence in this case. It only took a few moments to generate that. So yeah, you kind of pick and choose your battles there.
Yep.
Yes. All right, Chris, you got one bonus demo. We're going to go on uncharted territory. Take it away.
Oh, yes, we are. So this is our interactive demo, and this is going to be fully powered by you, the attendees. So obviously, we are super grateful that you've joined us today, and we're going to have another demo after this as well. But to participate in this demo, what we're going to do is demonstrate how FME could be used to pull from another API service. So Livestorm is our webinar platform. So what we're going to do is pull data from Livestorm, pull all the chat information as well as the attendees. So if you are interested in generating or having a personalized thank you message for joining this webinar generated for you, please send opt-in in the chat menu, in that chat bar. So this is going to only take your first name as well as your company name and pass that into a prompt, generate a meaningful response, a meaningful thank you for joining the webinar based on the information that you sent in the chat throughout the webinar. So it should be kind of a customized response back to you.
So the people that were joking about XML or nerds are going to get a little different email than any other people. Yeah,
I see we have tons of people saying opt-in. This is great. I will mention this is only going to work if you say opt-in. So if you said yes or go ahead, it's not going to work because we have to be very specific for those keywords. We are filtering based on that message. So if you haven't sent opt-in, you won't be receiving an email. So as Dale mentioned earlier, we're kind of going to be bound to the constraints of the responses, or sorry, not the responses, the number of requests we can send at a time. So this may take a few moments for your response to actually get sent to your email, and this will be sent to the same email that you registered to for the webinar for.
What kind of decelerator did you put in there, Chris?
So I think I have set it to, let me just take a quick look, and I'll show the workspace in just a second. The decelerator is set to 3 seconds in this case, just to make sure everyone's going to get their comments coming through.
Yeah, it'll take so if you're at the end of the pile, it could be later this afternoon. You get the email, but you will get it.
Yeah, this is great. So this has given us a bit of a buffer time too. So we have, I think the comments have started to slow down here. So we'll kind of explain how this is going to work. So again, just using an API-driven workflow, we're going to use FME to connect to Livestorm, which again is our webinar platform using the REST API. So we're going to reach out to Livestorm, get the list of attendees as well as the chat history, and then FME is going to join those. So it provides an ID based on the attendee ID as well as their, I think it's called author ID. And again, if that message opt-in is sent, we're going to generate a thank you message using the OpenAI platform. So once we've received that response from OpenAI, we're going to email that using just the emailer transformer. You again could do this in a automation using the email external action. In this case, Livestorm doesn't have a webhook trigger for new chat messages coming in. That was how I was planning on setting this up, because then it would have been a little bit more real time. In this case, I'm just going to run a workspace on my own. You could do this with a server app as well to just trigger it manually, and it's going to generate those responses and send those emails.
Awesome.
Yeah, actually, why don't I go to the workspace? I can talk about this at a very high level. So again, just what we're seeing here is we're passing in just some generic information from Livestorm to get the information we need. So we're going to get the list of people, we're going to get all the chat messages that you sent throughout the webinar, and we're going to join those together, put it into a single concatenated attribute. I ran this at the very beginning just to make sure it was still working, and I haven't run it yet. So emails will start coming through as soon as I hit the run button. We're then going to pull off your company name from your email, and that's kind of how we're going to determine it. Again, if you're using something like Gmail or Yahoo, it's going to be a bit more of a generic response just because we won't know what company you're associated with. And then we're going to pass that into an OpenAI prompt. So again, we're going to splitting it off based on if it's a generic email address that the general public will use, we'll go with a more generic response. Otherwise, let's say today we held a webinar on how to leverage Safe Software's FME automation capabilities. Let's write an informal thank you to so-and-so from Don, Chris, and Dale, specifically thanking them for being a part of the FME community and joining the webinar. We're then going to pass in all the information about that. So just that person's first name, as well as everything they said during the webinar to see if it can respond with something a little bit more meaningful, and also provide a little bit of a tip on how that company could use FME. So you're going to get a little bit more than what you're asking for here. And then, yeah, again, it's just doing some basic cleanup. So we're just going to make sure all this information is sent in a nicely formatted email body and subject. So I will add one more thing to note here. This email that it is sending from is not monitored by our Safe Software sales support or staff or support team either. We have CC'd our info@safe.com. So if for whatever reason you want to reach out and respond to that, just make sure you're responding to info@safe.com, and we'll make sure we get a response out to you. So I will start that, and we'll start to see emails coming through in just a moment here. In the meantime, while that runs, yeah, we kind of walked through that high level there. So again, we're just getting the attendees and chat messages. We're doing a simple join. We're doing a simple pass-fail test to see, has someone sent opt-in? If it doesn't contain opt-in, don't even let it pass through. And then we're generating those personal thank you messages. So yeah. So this is an example of kind of what you're going to see. This was sent to myself. I just a simple data set by sending in my own personal messages. And you can see that it's going to send a personalized thank you for joining the webinar. So a little bit of a fun one. And thank you so much for everyone who's sent that opt-in message. There's a lot of people who sent that in. So that's great to see. Is
it running right now, Chris?
It is running right now. So if Livestorm goes down, that's probably why.
Yeah. So with that, I think we're done our live demos, and we just have a few other use cases to look at, and then some musings about the future. Yeah, I can see on my screen Chris's workspace running. So some of you that were in early, the early bird gets the email, I guess. And if anybody gets one, do let us know in the chat. But yeah, so you can use it to generate summaries, notify stakeholders, and so on. All these sorts of things are possible. Classification, also possible. Trends in data, all of these things. Again, it's, I think, Don, would you say it's fair to say that even at SAFE, we're still, we've been thinking about this for almost 2 months, but it's still mind-blowing for us.
Yeah, it really is. And every day we think of new ways to use it, right? And the more you use it, so we encourage everybody, even just to play with ChatGPT, even if you haven't completely bought in, just try it and play with it. And then you'll start to realize, its strengths and its weaknesses. And, as Chris said, Chris made a very good point there that for these emails, we haven't proofed them. But if in a real world, you would have somebody go through them, make sure they're accurate and stuff like that. But
yes,
man, is this an accelerator for getting work done? Yeah.
So when I was prepping for this, I couldn't resist, because as part of product management at SAFE, Dawn had been working to assemble with the salespeople, and also Chris and Sienna, a big list of business systems that we might look to support at SAFE. And there was 124 of them in that list. And Andrea, the PM there, was working on a spreadsheet with them. And one of the columns she had was number of users. And I thought, wait a minute, maybe I could actually ask that of the OpenAI. So this literally took me about half an hour, and the longest time was on the second half of it, was the splitting and renaming and so on, horsing around there. But what I had to ask was, what company makes the product? What is its annual revenue? How many users of it are there, and how many employees are there? And then, as Chris showed, you have a new line, and then you say the column names you want separated by pipes. And so I fire that off and split it by pipes, do some renaming to get my attributes in the right place, and boom, then out they go back to the spreadsheet. And then, also the other thing I learned there was that I was doing more than 60, so I had rate limits, which is why I slowed this thing down to 4 per second. So anyway, that was that one.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Yeah.
And this gets to Dawn's one about drafts, or at least having a human look at it. So for emails, if you're going to do this, you might want to have the opportunity to kind of quickly look them over. So in this case, I wanted to figure out an interesting data set. So I asked OpenAI to generate me the names of some characters from TV series that I grew up with. And I wonder how many on this call will actually know some of these series. We'll see. But anyway, once I had that in a file, I had the first name, last name, the show, and their made-up email address, and some of their traits from that show. And then I said, write a humorous, exaggerated, informal email thanking them from me, their biggest fan. And so then it goes into the emailer, and the emailer now has a draft option on it. And so that's if you update yours from the hub, you get that. And so
Yeah,
here's
you said a very important thing there. You can control the voice that it
Yes.
comes back with. So you could, you know, if you didn't want humorous exaggerate, you could say write a very serious professional business type email, and it actually will change the, you know, what it generates. So it's just amazing that way.
I know, Don, you were doing some, you were thinking of the new website in Shakespearean English last night.
Yeah, so I asked it to explain what FME server does, as you know, in the tone of Shakespeare, and unbelievable, right? And also the King James Bible. So just hilarious. Yeah.
Exactly. So here's the data set. And Don, how many of these TV shows do you know?
Oh boy. Let's see. So far, I know all of them that are on that page. Yeah.
You know, one thing I was thinking is that I was watching football last night after I was celebrating this done, and it was a recording. And I wonder if Tom Brady was in the Brady Bunch, Don. Did he ever have an appearance?
Yeah, no, he was not.
I think he's old enough to have been.
Yes, he is.
He could have been. For all I know, maybe Peter changed his name to Tom. But anyway, this is the thing here. And then bang, here's all my drafts. And now inside of Gmail, I could walk through and see them. Like I can see that, for example, Aaron didn't quite work there down lower. There's one that says, thank you for your incredible performance as character in the Walton. So Aaron kind of getting ripped off there. Yeah. Good night, John. But at least one person has seen these shows. And I thought it did a great job of Alice from the Brady Bunch. You know, how all these things responsible. I mean, she was optimistic, Dawn. And
she really was. She really was.
Yeah.
So you can imagine this for your clients, right? You want to get back to people and like the email you're going to get from what Chris did. So just amazing.
Yeah. And then you, of course, can go in and fix it up. And here was John Boyce, because he was probably the most famous of all of them. And it talks about how he was such an inspiration to me personally and many people, others as well. So if some of you haven't seen these shows, you got a lot of streaming ahead of you. They are, well, I'm not sure all of them are worth seeing, but I'm not sure about 8 is Enough, but I actually saw that the child actor from 8 is Enough just passed away. That's how old that show is. So. Wow. Anyway, so another more practical one, you got structure. And somebody asked this chat. I actually asked the AI to generate me 3 examples like this. So here's a story of a bank heist. If you ask it to generate crimes, they're a little more grisly. So I went for bank heists instead. 3 men entered the bank in Toronto and so on. I want to get the address out of this. And similarly, here's another one, Calgary at 12345 Fifth Avenue. I think, Don, you and I almost worked next door to that when we worked at ESSO.
Yes, we did.
I think it was
the
on
northeast or the northwest or the southeastern.
That's true. Actually, wherever the TD Canada Trust is. So here's the workspace. Extract the address out of this. And then again, the Chris trick of pipes between the things, attribute splitter. And just like that, Bob's your uncle. Yeah. He's just parsed it.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Exactly.
So a few tricks and tips. It's not afraid to make things up. So probably lower the temperature on that setting if you want more factual things, or crank it up if you want it to be a little more loose with alternative facts. The tokens are an issue. The default that comes down is only 16 when we fill it in, but that for most of the stuff that I've worked with, that's not enough. So I've cranked it way up. And if you want an answer, you're rewarded for being clear. And the last one is also pretty true, that you should be ready that there's going to be mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely.
A few more things. The decelerator is your friend for staying, like as we would say, know your limit, stay within it. And so I did set up my account to be paid, but frankly, it didn't help my rate limit at all. So and I mentioned about you can have more than one API key for your account, and I've had mine for whatever reason seems to have gotten really attached to just one use case. So I made another one. And then somebody asked, actually, I don't know if it was Dawn, maybe it might have been you, what is the terms of use? And so we managed to find a very nice line that says, basically, you can go nuts with whatever it creates.
Yeah.
And here's how you can try it yourself. Jason is, there's no XML involved on, but your second best friend, Jason, is in the game.
That's right. His little brother, Jason. That's right.
So you do need to ask it to give you XML back.
Oh,
good. Yeah, that's fine.
I bet it costs more.
Yeah.
Somebody was saying, can they get a verification level responses? Chris, I know some of the models give you a score, don't they?
Yes, I hadn't played with the score value, but I do believe that is one of the parameters that you get back.
Yeah, not on the DaVinci 3. Like there's a huge number of different models, and we've not really explored them very much, but some of them you can say, give me 3 things, and then it gives you like a confidence measure. So so that could be interesting as well.
Yeah.
Don, you want to talk to this one?
Yeah, and really this is what FME brings to the party. It brings in the ability to connect OpenAI to, you know, certainly more than 450, and it's going up every day with the FME hub. So if you want to connect, you know, OpenAI API to your systems, and that's what FME brings to the party. Yeah.
Yeah. And so a few words about the future. Well, it seems like a low-hanging fruit would be to help people write these sorts of things. And you can imagine that we integrate that in there somehow. That seems like, you know, fairly obvious. Yeah, but what do you think about this next one, Don?
Yes, yes. I mean, this is so good. If it could look at your workspace and what you, oh yeah, there's so much potential here because, you know, as this shows, it does answer questions, and you're going to want to look at this. A lot of this is correct, but once it gets down to number 5, there is no such thing as a Salesforce inserter. So it made that up, but it understands their naming, and also step 6 is not how we would do it. But still, when you look at what it gives you back, it certainly, you know, gives you ideas on what you should use. So a lot of potential there. Yeah. Yeah.
Just in case we aren't scared yet, GPT-4 is going to be dramatically more powerful. And this is, depending on who you talk to, this is sort of one thing I saw, but I've seen another one that says it's only twice as good as 3. But twice as good, only twice as good, is still pretty good.
It's pretty good. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Don.
Yeah, so we asked it, you know, what does ChatGPT mean to traditional search? And this is the answer it came with. It was too long. I was lazy. So then it just said, please shorten that to 20 words or less. And then it came back. So at SAFE now, a lot of us are using GPT instead of search.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can see there it was conversational, right? So, yeah. So this one, the Azure has an open API service. And what this will do is, now you are running the OpenAI technology within your own cloud stack. And so you're not going to be competing with everybody else for resources. So you're going to get, you know, much better response. You're going to pay more, but boy, you know, this thing is so valuable. I wouldn't be surprised if in the future, when we bolt this on the back of FME, we are using, you know, our own service. It's just,
yes. Yeah. And actually, that's why this story is moving fast. I think it was just 2 days ago that Microsoft announced the general availability of this thing. So anyway, too fast for us to have tried it for this webinar.
Yeah, I love the chats. People are laughing because I said please. Oh, us Canadians, you do get a nicer answer if you say please and thank you.
Yeah. We say like, sorry to bother you, OpenAI, but would you mind?
Right. Sorry to bother you. Yeah. So, funny. So this just sort of again drives home, you know, how FME and OpenAI API play together, because really unleashing OpenAI and joining it to your corporate data, any kind of data, is really where, you know, your imagination can let run, because you have no constraints on it. So yeah, so we really look forward. Let us know when you use FME with OpenAI what you do. That would be really fascinating to share with the whole community. Yeah. And so, we asked OpenAI about FME and OpenAI. We asked ChatGPT about FME and OpenAI, and here's what it said. They're a match made in heaven, Dale.
Yes.
And see,
they really are.
So that's why it was so complimentary. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, they really, really are. And so just in summary, this is what go ahead, right? Like, what would you say to this, Don?
Yeah, I mean, already we are, and the thing about ChatGPT and OpenAI is how easy it is, right, to get started. It's all about, as Dale said earlier, it's all about the prompt. It's not about building big, complicated websites to do things. If you ask it the question, it will figure it out and bring the data back. It is just amazing what GPT-3 and FME can do now.
Yeah, and I think it uses the shipping FME, so I think you need 2022.2. However, actually, you could use it with older FMEs if you wanted to. You'd have to recreate that custom transformer, but it's just an HTTP caller. So if you really are stuck, you can make it work with an older FME. You just have to do a little bit of work yourself. But it's like really, actually, this could be, you could probably use FME 2015,
Probably.
right? Like,
Yeah. If it has HTTP caller in it, you can use it.
Yeah. So just as we wrap up here, I know we're at time. And if you have to leave, thanks so much for joining us. We'll do a little bit of wrap up here. We will be sending you these workspaces without our keys in them a little bit later. I'm not sure if we'll generate the email or not, but talk to us at info@safe.com. Have some fun experimenting. If you are new to FME, you can talk with us and take that accelerator. Don, what would you say about that?
Yeah, the accelerator is, if you're new to FME, 90 minutes, it's hands-on. It is by far the best way to get started with FME. Otherwise, you open a blank canvas, and the team at SAFE has really put it, made this thing so it only takes 90 minutes and then off to the races. Then you can download, get a trial, or we'll walk you through so you have success. So yeah, best way to start.
If you're on the community, you can grab this badge, FMLWP, and get another badge for your collection. Community has got like 25,000-ish people in there. And so if you aren't in the community, it's a great place to go and swap stories and learn.
Yeah.
We got more webinars.
We do. More webinars are coming all the time. So thanks to Elizabeth and team. Yeah. So there's some, I know that there's a great program for the next quarter coming up. Don, you did a lot of work on this. Yeah, so this is, you want to get started with understanding how spatial data and FME can impact your enterprise. There you go, get the ebook, fme.ly/dummies ebook. And yeah, it's really good.
Yep. Whoa.
Yeah, and we have a European UC coming, the Pika Data Integration in Bonn, Germany. So registration opens January 25th. So it's really easy to remember. If you go to peakofdataintegration.com, you'll find all the information there. If you want to present, you can do that there as well. And we put it on with our great partner in Germany, Contera. Yeah,
very, very excited about that. We'll see if Don and I have been replaced by bots by then. Yeah. Okay. Well, we are only 2 minutes over, and wow, there's been so much action. We might want to invite Mark, Ireland, or Sienna on here to kind of summarize what the questions were, if there's anything that's worth highlighting, and we'll hang around a little bit longer just to wrap up. But if you have to go, please do. But Mark or Sienna, what did you see happening?
There was a lot of talking about whether FME could generate whether ChatGPT could generate new FME workspaces if we asked it to, which will be something for the future, perhaps.
Yes. Yeah.
Also, whether it could document what workspaces do, which I thought was very cool.
You know, I was thinking as I was doing these demos, you hit Command K, and right now it pops up a bubble with only the name of the transformer there. And I wondered if we would feed the parameters and the transformer name in, and then say, write me a short comment about what this is doing, if that would be fast.
It would. And another common question was how up to date the information is that we're getting back.
Yes. I think it always, what does it say, Don? Is it, or Chris, it has a date that it tells you.
Yeah, it's 2021, I believe the model is trained up to. It does mention this in their documentation. And I think if you ask ChatGPT, which is a different model set, I believe it's GPT 3.5, if I'm correct, it'll tell you what the threshold is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering, like, if you could say, well, what was the hockey score last night? And it would tell you. So, I mean, I don't know. No. Oh, well.
Anything else?
I'm just taking a quick look. Someone was asking about Python code and if we've checked it out, and how accurate and how useful is Python code that ChatGPT generates.
I've not used it personally, but I've seen examples. posted that are very good, especially the smaller, like the more focused you want something written, the better. But I think I think actually for many cases, it's extremely good. Oh, here's Mitch saying that he has used it to get working Python. Yeah. So several people chiming in. Yeah.
Yeah. I've done it for the regular expressions, and that, again, it goes back to what you were saying about being able to ask the right question. And a lot of the time it really was great. And if it wasn't, well, at least it got me started on something. So
Yeah. Yeah. The better the prompt, the better the results.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And another question was, is it possible to use this to detect real life features from aerial photos? Which I know we have a transformer that does that, the Pictera connector.
Yeah, I think I don't know that OpenAI is doing that right now particularly, but there is this Swiss company that we have a custom transformer for that Dimitri has recently been working with, and I think that's the way to go there, or at least to experiment with.
Did you see any other good questions, Sienna? I think
we have some new ones coming in. Do you believe that in the future that ChatGPT will also be available offline?
I don't.
Okay.
What do you think, Dawn? Oh, Dawn's muted. Basically, it needs.
Yeah, no, I don't see that either. There's a huge data center running in the back, and
Yeah.
you know, and the future of AI is going to be what's going on in these massive data centers. So, you know,
Yeah.
maybe if you have a semi trailer and you have a deal with OpenAI, you could download it into a massive disk, but it's not going to run on anything small. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is it's getting better every day. Like you ask it a question today, and then you ask the same question tomorrow, and the answer will be slightly different. And it also goes back to the prompt, Dale? Like if you just change the prompt slightly and you really start to understand, you know, how it works. So yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Another question, how about more training around FME and AI for a person new to FME? Do we have anything in the works?
Yeah, I mean that is a great question, and we certainly could do that. Yeah,
Yes.
and the thing is with OpenAI and chat, it's really easy. So you know, most of the learning is, you know, on how to do the prompt, but then we could teach you. We could have how do you do triggers? How do you connect to other things with REST APIs? And so there is, So
That's a
great suggestion.
Extremely good idea. Yeah.
Really.
Do we have time? There's another one that just came in.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. I'll present it now. Can we ask AI to analyze our workspace and give us suggestions on how to optimize it?
That would be, I don't think it'll give you an answer, a good answer, but the thing is you can try it. That's the beauty of it. You know, give OpenAI, you know, and see what it does. You could pipe it in there and say, here's a workspace. I mean, the problem is it's a mess of, you know, at the top's beautiful XML, but everything else, I don't know. It would be interesting to see. I don't think it would say much, but you never know.
But it is, you know, again, we could imagine turning the workspace into an English description of what it is. You know, the head bone's connected to the knee bones, connected to the leg bone, whatever it is. And then ask it, okay, is there a better way to do this? If you, and we have a whole corpus of workspaces at SAFE. So, but I don't know. I mean, that's an interesting future thing. We don't know yet how we can train the model for our own particular domain. And that would be needed.
Yeah, and the exciting thing about these questions is maybe today we say, geez, you know, we can't do that.
Yes.
But it's moving so fast.
Yes.
That you know, our answer today could be completely different in a week, a month, or a year, right? This is just the beginning. This is just the beginning of, you know, really. I'll say December 1st, 2022. It started slightly before that, but that's really when it became wide known. So this is going to change everything in the next. I can't imagine what it's going to be like in 1, 3, 5, or 10 years, Dale.
Yes. Because we're riding that exponential curve, and as it cranks to the right, it gets harder and harder to hold on.
Yeah.
Have you guys tried using it for spell check? Can it find mistakes?
I haven't.
No,
I haven't either. From what I saw in the examples, it does a pretty good job at it, though.
Yeah.
Great.
We have had people ask, actually, would we ever have a spell checker in the comment part of Workbench? But that's sort of a dramatically simpler problem.
Yeah.
One of the examples in the OpenAI playground is grammar correction, so it should be able to do spelling as well.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, but I personally haven't tried it.
There's this one, aside from JSON, what other knowledge or courses do you recommend for users to maximize what AI can do with FME?
You know, Sienna, I'm thinking of some of the webinars you've done. Maybe Chris has been on them too, but I remember you've done them on just basically using FME with APIs in general. Haven't you done a couple webinars on that?
Yeah, we have I believe 2 in the series of just getting started with APIs and FME, and definitely once you know the HTTP caller and all that it can do a lot of amazing things, and you can connect it to other resources as well. So
Yes,
the sky's the limit.
Yeah, it really is. And please do reach out to us on info and let us know what training you would like. We can always throw together, special courses that address a whole number of people, and we can put on extra accelerator if there's a lot of people who want that. So yeah, here to help. So for sure, you're not on your own. Our community and the team at Safe is amazing. So, yeah.
All right, I think we're done with the questions panel.
Okay.
Great.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
And we are still sending out emails. We had 454 people opt in. So if you haven't received it yet, it is still in the works.
Fantastic. Yeah. So thank you, everybody. I know we're over time, but, this is super exciting. And it was really great to be part of this and, at Safe too. And I always enjoy the amazing team here. But thanks, everybody who came to the webinar. And do keep in touch.
Yes. And do share for us. I mean, maybe you'll be presenting at our conference in Germany in September, the amazing things you've done, how you've revolutionized your workplace with FME and OpenAI. I have a hunch we're going to see some interesting examples by then. What do you think, Don? Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait. I mean, every day at Safe, people are coming up with new things that are just remarkable. So, yeah. So, and everybody will get the webinar recording. So that's the good to share around. So, yeah.
Well, thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. I know I speak for Dawn and I and Chris and everybody at the team at Safe that we had just a great deal of fun today putting this together and putting this on. And we're so glad that you joined us.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.